Hey, Shalom, Akim, Shalom. First and foremost, as always, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachakodash. I would like to give double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone that taught us his truth and that's still teaching his truth, and much peace, love, and salutation to the elect, beginning with the 144,000, all the way down to the large multitude that believes and who the Lord will deliver in these last days. To you all I say Shalom. I'm the brother Tazamah from the Great Millstone Dallas camp, coming back today with another lesson, and I pray this lesson will be edifying to the elect of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. And today's lesson is going to be entitled along the lines of when defense is really war, Edom revealed. All right, when defense is really war, Esau, Edom revealed. You know, something along those lines. And inspiration of this lesson just came by way of the recent news that Donald Trump recently came out with a couple weeks ago. I'm going to say maybe it was like 2 weeks ago, that he's changing the name of the DOD, which is the Department of Defense, to the DOW, the Department of War. And you know that these devils, you know, that the blessing that was given to Esau, he will be given a sword, as the prophecy states. As a matter of fact, let's get that. All right, Esau, Edom will be blessed with a sword. Okay, this is Genesis 27. And just get straight to the point. This is Genesis 27 and let's see, 39. Just getting straight to the point. It says, "And Isaac his father answered and said unto him," and this is whenever Jacob or Yaquab pretty much supplanted Esau for the blessing. All right, Jacob, you know, Isaac, I rather say, he was in his old age, so he thought that Jacob was really Esau, because Esau's the elder brother. All right, but he thought that Jacob was really Esau through through the trickery through Rebecca. You know, Rebecca pretty much helped Jacob trick Isaac into thinking that he was really Esau, and that's what Jacob's name means. His name means is Yaquab in the Hebrew, which means supplanter. All right, and you have these Christians that would say, see, Jacob was really in the wrong because he tricked Esau out the blessing. Which at the end of the day, these Christians don't know what the hell they're talking about, because ultimately the nation of Israel was chosen. All right, in the spirit, all right, before the foundation of the world, to be the chosen nation that Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai was going to deal with. But anyways, that's another lesson for another day. It says, "And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, Behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth, and of the dew of heaven from above." You know, because Jacob received the same blessing as well as Esau. All right, Jacob received the fatness of the earth, and Esau received the fatness of the earth. And right now we're living, all right, in Esau's blessing. All right, and it says the fatness of the earth, and when you get that word fatness, all right, that word fatness in the Hebrew is mashaman. All right, mashaman, it says fatness, fat piece, fertile place, richly prepared food. It says fatness, fat pieces, oil, olive oil. So fatness also means oil. And when you look at Esau and his you know, in his war machine, for lack of better words, you know, using NATO, all right, as pretty much the battle axe that goes around the earth, just hammering all these different nations into subjection. A lot of it's based upon oil. You know, the war in Iraq was based upon, you know, who can control, you know, that region of the earth, and who can control the oil that's flowing in and out, for lack of better words. All right, I'm saying it very briefly, but you know, when you go into it, you know, that's why the dollar, all right, the dollar is called the petrodollar, because in order for goods to be transported, all right, it has to be done through the dollar. All right, the petrodollar, that's what made America extremely rich. And that would be one of Esau's blessings, would be what? The fatness of the earth. It says, here's the point, verse 40, it says, "And by thy sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother. And it shall come to pass, when thou shalt have the dominion," right? When thou shalt have the dominion. And when you get that word dominion here, I want to say that word is nawad or wawad, excuse me. That word dominion says to wander restlessly, or to roam. You see, it says to wander restlessly, and that's exactly what Esau does, man. Esau wanders restlessly throughout the whole planet Earth. That's why the scripture says in the book of Habakkuk, he enlarges his desire as hell, and as death. He heapeth unto himself all people. You know, he goes throughout the whole planet Earth and just completely just dismantles governments. He dismantles heritages. That's why all these various different nations, eventually the Lord's going to put the spirit upon them, which you already see it happening now. But the Lord is really going to put the spirit upon these various different nations to rise up against Esau. That's why the scripture says, shall they not rise up suddenly that shall bite thee? You see? So it says, when thou shalt have the dominion, which once again it says to wander restlessly, or to roam, to be restless, show restlessness. Okay? And that's the spirit that Esau's in, man. He's restless, man. Okay? And the scripture says that he doesn't even go to sleep until he causes something to stumble. And he does that on a worldwide scale, but it's really aimed at the Israelites. Because he understands and knows, Esau understands and knows that we're the true chosen people. And the more that he can get our people to go off and, the more he can get our people to go off and, transgress against Yahweh Ba'Shem Al Shai, the more that he thinks he'll be able to fulfill his blessing. Okay? So once again, it says, and it shall come to pass when thou shalt have the dominion, mind you, he's speaking to Esau here, when he has the dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. You see, because at one point Esau was in subjection, and this really took place, after, during the Renaissance period, whenever, after the 1,000-year period, after the Byzantine Empire was pretty much complete, that 1,000-year period was complete. That's when Esau came back into power through the Renaissance. You had Christopher Columbus that came over here to the Americas, and put the northern tribes into captivity. Then the southern kingdom came over here to the Americas as well to serve hardcore slavery. And that's when Esau really began to pretty much get his foothold back into the earth. And this is really when his blessing that was fulfilled. It was fulfilled in this captivity over here. You had the Renaissance, which is the rebirth. Pretty much he did iconoclasm to various different images. But the point is that he will live by his sword. Okay, that's Esau's blessing. All right, let's get one more precept and we'll read some of the article. I don't want the lesson to be too long. This is Psalm 140. We'll start at verse 1. It says to the chief musician, a psalm of David. It says, deliver me, O Yahweh, from the evil man. Preserve me from the violent man. And who's that violent man? That violent man is talking about Esau, man. How is he the violent man? Because he uses his sword. And his sword comes in various different forms, man. It's not necessarily only just his weaponry, that's the major point. That's the major part of his sword. But a big piece of his sword is also to the legislation that he's passed, the legislation that he passes. Esau being able to go in and topple governments and use God damn. Not the World Economic Forum, but the world. You have the World Bank. That's another bank I'm thinking of, man. But pretty much through these, through his policies, he's able to go in, topple these governments, and put them in continual debt. All right, through pretty much the loans that he gives out, that causes these nations to be in perpetual captivity, for lack of better words, man. And the scripture says that the borrower is subject to the lender. Okay, it says, which imagine mischiefs in their heart. Continually are they gathered together for war. You see that? Continually are they gathered together for war. And when you look at the since the conception of America up until now, all right, America has been on the offensive side of all the wars that they've been involved in. Esau's been involved in. America's been on the offensive side every single time. Okay, so it's no reason as to why Donald J. Trump, aka Emperor Nero, coming back in a reincarnation, is naming the Department of Defense. He's changing it into the Department of War. Okay, because that's the time that we're in right now. All right, let's get Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter. Okay, this is Ecclesiastes chapter 3. I'm jumping straight to the point. Verse 8. It says, a time to love. I'm sorry. Let me go to verse 1. It says, to everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. So for every purpose there's a I was rather say for everything there's a season, right? So jumping down to the point, it says a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. You see that? So we're not in the time of peace right now. We're in the time of war. Now they're going to use deception to say, when the scripture says that when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as a woman in travail. They'll try to use peace and try to say that this nation here is having peace talks and that everything gonna be good. But no, at the end of the day, Yahweh Ba'Shem Al Shai is the one that's stirring up the spirit of war in these Edomites, man. And they're getting ready to wage war, and they're getting ready to wage war on the everyday American here in America. And they're getting ready to wage war specifically on you Jakes, man, you tribes, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, man. That's what they're getting ready to do. Because remember, he has an agenda. He wants to cut us off from being a nation. Why do you think Donald J. Trump is now, so headstrong about the Space Force? And, he implemented the Space Force. And then with him implementing the Space Force, what did he do? He's moving the Space Force now from Colorado to Alabama. He's doing all these various different things, man. You got this probe that they're saying is a probe, coming towards Earth. He has the federal troops pretty much. He has the police federalized. So you clearly see that there's a siege in America getting ready to take place, man. He's about to put troops in Chicago. There's already Marines and reservists already in California, D.C., Baltimore. Chicago's next. Okay, they're moving the troops in position to completely siege America, man. You see, it ain't necessarily about just war across these different nations, man. I mean, that is he's about to do that too, but it's mainly war here in America, man, against the average everyday American. That's why it says continually are they gathered together, all right, for war. All right, just bear with me. I got to pause it for a moment. All right, Salaki for that. I had to run into the store real quick. But yeah, with Donald J. Trump changing the name of the Department of Defense into the Department of War, it clearly shows you, the spirit that the so-called white man is in. And it also just, once again, it just further proves who he is biblically. All right. So I'm gonna read a little bit of this article. It's not really a long article, but I'm gonna read it, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashmal Shai. I'll get more precepts, the ones that the Lord provides in my mind. And once again, I pray this is edifying. So it says last week. So it was last week. It says last week, President Trump took steps to rename the Department of Defense the Department of War. All right. The president explained his rationale for the name change. It says it used to be called the Department of War, and it had a stronger sound. And I want to say it was called the Department of War. Damn, what year was that? Was it like 19? It might have been like 19. Maybe it was in the 20s. Maybe it was in the 1920s, possibly. Let me actually see real quick. Let me Google it real quick. Yeah, give me 1 second. Let me Google this real fast. Come on, dog. Golly. When was the Department of Defense last called the Department of War? 1947. The Department of Defense was last called the Department of War until the National Security Act of 1947. So it was 1947. All right, and I want to say 1947 was the beginning of the Cold War. And we already know, with the Cold War that was between, you had Russia, which is Gog, Magog, which Magog means from Gog, and America going at it. And we see Russia right now, alluding to Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, being pulled back into that USSR spirit. So it's all spiritual. All right, it says it used to be called the Department of War, and it had a stronger sound. We want defense, but we want offense too. And America has been on the offensive, a mass majority of the time of its conception. It's 200 and something years. Out of the 200 going on 250 years that America has been a nation, America has been on the offensive, more than 3/4 of its conception. Okay. It says, as the Department of War, we want everything, and I think we have to get back to that. All right, because the last war, okay, that they're gonna ultimately fight, all right, it's gonna be a war in the heavens. All right, of course, it's going to be World War III when all the nations are going to be gathered together to the valley of Jehoshaphat, Yahweh Shaphat. But he's also going to try to wage war against Yahweh Shai and the Holy Host. All right, this is Revelation chapter 12, verse 7. It says, and there was war in heaven. All right, and this war in heaven isn't talking about some war between the Archangel Michael and Satan, you know, before the creation of man. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's another thing for you dumb, big head ass Christians out here. You know, they like to allude this to, you know, the heavens. You know, they like to allude this to Satan being cast out. Satan was his angel, and the Lord, and, you know, he tried to rebel against the Most High, and he had him and his homies tried to fight against the Most High, but here it is. Christians like to take that idea, but John the Revelator seen a revelation of things that must shortly come to pass, as is written. So if this is things that must shortly come to pass, you know, then what's going on here? But anyways, that's not talking about that whole ideology, because they get that whole ideology between it really goes back to Greek mythology. You know, it's the Greek mythology of the story of the gods of Olympus and the Titans fighting against one another. They get that from ancient Sumerian texts and things of that nature. So once again, it says, and there was war in heaven. It says Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. All right, and who was that dragon? Once again, who was that dragon? Because that dragon wasn't around. The beast system wasn't around before the world came into before the world was created, or before Adam was created. You know, Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, because it tells you in Daniel the 12th chapter that Michael the archangel will have to stand up. All right, because it's going to be a time of trouble. In Daniel 12:1, and at that time shall Michael stand up, that the great prince will stand up for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble, Jacob's trouble, such as never was since there was a nation even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, everyone that shall be found written in the book. Okay, so this is going to be the time, this is going to be at the climax, if you will, of Jacob's trouble. So once again, there was a war in heaven, and you can read about that war in heaven, all right, in 2nd Ezra, the 13th chapter. Okay, it says Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, right? Because you got the dragon, this beast system that's ran by Esau and his angels, his military, and prevailed not. Okay, and they're not going to be able to prevail against Yahweh Shai and the Holy Host. Remember, the scripture says that there was an innumerable multitude gathered together to fight against the man that came out the sea, which the sea meaning the firmament, the Shemayim, the heavens. All right, it says, and there was nothing to be perceived but the smell of dust, but dust and the smell of smoke. It says, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And this is where you can liken that scripture where Yahweh Shah said, I beheld Satan fall as lightning. Okay, I beheld Satan fall as lightning, because that's when Esau is going to be completely put down. Okay, it's whenever Yahweh Shah returns and completely dismantles this man's system. And Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shah is a man of war. Okay, so just like in Egypt, whenever Pharaoh tried to wage war against the nation of Israel, all right, what did the Lord do? The Lord showed that his warfare is far greater than the warfare of man. Far greater, far more advanced. Okay. It says, at first it sounds like a terrible idea. It says a department of war may well make war more likely. You see that? The stronger sound may embolden the U.S. government to take us unto even more wars. You see that? And that's Esau's motive. Hey, let's get Revelation 6. And you see what Donald J. Trump is doing. You see what the cruel Lord himself is doing. You know? Donald J. Trump is completely, showing forth that he don't give it. Everything that he said about the whole make America great again, we're going to come against the deep state, we're going to stop this, we're going to do that, we're going to make America great again. Woo, MAGA. And you had these red-blooded Budweiser drinking Americans over here. Yeah. But here it is. He's completely reneging on everything that he said. All right, but this is Esau for you. All right, this is Revelation 6 and 5. It says, when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, come and see. And I beheld, and lo, a black horse. I'm sorry, I'm at the wrong one. That's my fault. Salakia. Revelation 6 and 3. All right, it says, and when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, come and see. It says, and there went out a horse that was red. And who was this red horse? Remember, the scripture says that Esau, Edom came out red all over like a hairy garment. So this red horse, and horse represents power, is talking about the power structure of Esau, man. And there went out another red horse. There went out another horse that was red. It says, and power was given to him that sat thereupon to take peace from the earth, right? So he's not going to bring peace, he's going to bring war. And that they should kill one another. There it is. And there was given unto him a great sword. The same thing that we read in Genesis 27. The blessing of Esau, Edom was a sword. Okay? And once again, Esau, Edom is showing forth his true colors. He's showing you. Well, really, Salakia, Yahweh Bashem Shai is showing you who this devil is. It ain't Japhet. Japhet ain't the so-called white man. Japhet wouldn't be doing this in the last days. Not according to prophecy. So stop saying, oh, the so-called white man is Japhet. That bullshit. That ain't no. Japhet don't fit the prophecy with that. Okay? It says, there will no longer be any need for the pretext that we take the nation to war to defend this country and its interests, and only as a last resort. It says, as Clinton administration official Madeleine Albright famously asked of Joint Chiefs Chairman Colin Powell, which Colin Powell, he's been I want to say he was was he the Secretary of State? Or was that Condoleezza Rice? I can't remember. It's one of them two. I know I was younger. You know what I'm saying? I was younger whenever they were whenever they was doing their thing. I think Colin Powell, I think he's in the spirit world now, if I'm not mistaken. And then I think Condoleezza Rice was the Secretary of State. But once again, I was pretty young. No excuse, but I was pretty young back then. I remember I was still like in elementary school at that time. It says, as Clinton administration official Madeleine Albright famously asked of Joint Chiefs Chairman Colin Powell when she was pushing for U.S. war in the Balkans, what's the point of having this superb military that you're always talking about if we can't use it? All right, because that's what makes Esau the hammer of the earth. And the scripture tells you that the hammer. Let me get that real quick. The hammer of the earth. He was the one that smote the nations with a perpetual stroke as well, like it says in Isaiah 14. All right, this is Jeremiah 50. All right, Jeremiah 50 and 23. All right, in Jeremiah 50, Jeremiah 49, 50, 51 are heavy chapters going into the destruction of Babylon the Great and the fall of Esau, Edom, man. Okay? This is Jeremiah 50 and 23. It says, how is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? You see, and who's the hammer of the earth? The hammer of the earth is Esau, man. How does he hammer the earth? He hammers the earth through his military, man. Through his sword. How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? And and really it's America, because America's the whore that rides upon the beast. It says, how has Babylon become a desolation among the nations? You see, and that Babylon is talking about America. Because through America, pretty much using the sword to dismantle these various different nations, the nations they're going to become mad. As it says in Jeremiah 51. Okay. Continuing on, it says, so yes, that is a real danger. But at the same time, the U.S. has been at war nearly constantly since the end of World War II, right? And World War II was what, 1942, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not like the Defense Department has been in any way a defensive department. You see, they've been at war since World War II. So it's not really a Department of Defense. When you play football, basketball, whatever, right? When you on defense, right, you got to stop the opposing person from trying to score. Whether it's football, whether it's basketball, America's not in that stance. America's on the offensive every single time in every aspect. You see, that's why do you think America's called the virgin daughter of Babylon? Because America really hasn't been infiltrated and touched like that. You haven't had nations just came and just did something here in America, and America was just crippled. They like to use the whole, you're gonna have these these people. Oh, what about 9/11? Well, 9/11 was an inside job. Well, what about Pearl Harbor? Pearl Harbor was another inside job. You see, I'm talking about where something massive, took place. You see, America really ain't been touched like that. That's why it's called the virgin daughter of Babylon. And look at the picture. You got the eagle, and I'm going to use that as my thumbnail. Okay, then you got the eagle on top of the world. Hey, let's get Obadiah. Hey, this is heavy, man. Obadiah 1. Obadiah 1 and 3. It says, the pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock. And what are Caucasians? Caucasians mean cave dweller. You see, and Esau, look at Donald J. Trump and his pride right now, man. I'm talking about unbelievably proud, excuse me. The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high. You see that? Their habitation is high. They feel like they can't be brought down. And when you look at Donald J. Trump, even though this man is dying, you know what I'm saying? This man is getting ready to give up the ghost. He's showing forth the pride of Esau, man. It says that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle. And what is America's symbol? Well, here it is. The bald eagle. And what are eagles known for, man? Eagles are known for their keen sight, and they're known for their hunting skills. You see, they're known for their keen sight, they're known for their hunting skills, and they're known to be the highest flying bird. Like an eagle, man, like an eagle's vision is man, how the Spirit of the Lord made an eagle's eye. That's what they call it, eagle vision. Like an eagle's eye is complex to the point to where it can see miles away. You see? And how does America really use its military? Is through its Air Force. And that's why Israel is so quote unquote so strong, because it relies upon its Air Force. Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, right? And though thou set thy nest among the stars, and when you break down that word nest from the Webster's dictionary, that word nest, all right, means weaponry. I remember Apostle Gabar brought that out. I remember this is some years ago. Let's see, it might be here. Boom. You see that? This is Webster's dictionary, number 6. An emplaced group of weapons. And what is he doing with the heavens right now? The Space Force. Like, bro, come on now. Like, what else more needs to be said? Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith Yahweh. You see? So as Esau begins to do this and try to exalt himself and set his nest amongst the stars in the heavens, that's when the Lord's going to bring his ass down. That's why the Apostle Tahar been saying through the Spirit, man, we got months left. Whether it be 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, whatever. We got months left. There's not a lot of time left here in Babylon, man. There's not a lot of time left here. Okay? Slocky, let's go back. Here it is. All right, so it says, with that on the mind, returning the Department of Defense to the Department of War, which is how it started, may not be such a bad idea after all, as long as we can be honest about the rest of the terms about our war making. You see, America, because America's on the offensive every time. If we return to a War Department, then we should also return to the constitutional requirement that any military actively engaged, let me read that again. If we return to a War Department, quote unquote, then we should also return to the constitutional requirement that any military actively engaged in by that department, short of defending against an imminent attack on the U.S., requires a congressional declaration of war, which America has not done that. Donald J. Trump has not done that. When Donald Trump bombed Iran, he didn't go to Congress about it, he just did it. When he recently just bombed a ship over there in Venezuela, he didn't go to Congress, he just did it. Showing you Esau's in that spirit, man. He's in that spirit of war. It says that was the practice followed when it was called the War Department, and we should return to it. They're not going to return to it. You know, they're not going to return to that quote unquote that practice. All right, we're talking about the Edomites here, man. We're talking about the one that's continually gathered together for war. You see? So they're not going to return back to, you know, we got to go to Congress first. We got to go to the UN first. No, Donald J. Trump is in the spirit of just doing it. Just like he said in Chicago, he said, "Look, we going in." That's literally what he said. We're going in. Hey, fuck it, we're going in. I can't tell you when, but we gonna go in. That's what he said. Dropping the notion that we have a Defense Department. Dropping the notion that we have a Defense Department will free us from the charade that our massive military spending budget was anything but a war budget. And they spend, man, they spend what, a year on the Department of Defense? How much money? Like, I want to say it might be trillions if I'm not mistaken. You know what? Let's actually just Google it real quick. How much money is spent on the DOD each year? Look at this. The United States Department of Defense budget varies, but it accounted for approximately $820 billion in fiscal year 2023, with a request for $842 billion for fiscal year 2024 and a proposed amount of $850 billion for fiscal year 2025. $850 billion is going into the Department of War. Almost $1 trillion a year is going to what? The sword, man. Come on now. It says no more defense appropriations bills in Congress. Let's call them war appropriation bills, because they're going to be on the offensive every time. Let the American people understand what so much of their hard-earned money is being taken to support. It's not defense, it's war. You see that? And that's where your tax dollars is going to. And none of it has benefited the American people. And that's what's going to cause people to start losing their minds, man. 2 Corinthians 15. The course of their actions shall stand in their power. Trump misunderstands one very important thing in his stated desire to return to a war department. However, a tougher sounding name did not win the wars. Before the name change, which happened after the infamous National Security Act of 1947 that created the CIA and the permanent national security state, we won wars because, for the most part, we followed the Constitution and had a yada, yada, yada. No, you won war. America won wars because the Lord was with America to establish. The Lord was with Esau to set up Babylon the Great. That's why. All right. Let's read this last bold part. So go ahead and change it back to the Department of War. But let's also stop pretending that maintaining the global U.S. military empire is defense. It's not, because America has been on the offensive a mass majority of the time. Which goes to show you the spirit of Esau, man. These are the Edomites. Okay? So I pray this lesson was edifying to the elect. Once again, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone, taught us the truth and that's what teaching is truth, and much peace, love, and salutation to the elect. Until next time, Lord willing, I say shalom.